thunder splitting the sky. Naya Okafor pressed herself deeper under the mahogany desk, her palm clamped over her mouth to trap the scream clawing up her throat. The smell hit her next. Sharp, metallic gunpowder mixing with the lemon cleaner still wet on her hands. Her heart hammered so violently she was certain it would give her away. Please, God. More shots. Closer now. Glass shattered somewhere down the hallway. Korean voices barked commands she couldn't understand, each syllable hard and urgent. Her cleaning cart lay overturned by the door, yellow gloves scattered like evidence of her presence. She squeezed her eyes shut and saw her mother's grave. Rain-soaked earth. That crooked wooden cross. The promise she'd whispered through tears. I won't lose myself, Mama. No matter what happens, I won't disappear. The office door exploded inward. Boots. Heavy, purposeful. 3 pairs, maybe 4. They moved through the room with practiced efficiency, drawers yanked open, papers rustling. Nia's lungs burned. She needed air, but didn't dare breathe. Then the footsteps stopped, right beside the desk. A hand, rough, calloused, seized her ankle and dragged her out. Nia's scream finally broke free as her body scraped across the polished floor. She kicked wildly, her vision blurred with terror. Faces swam above her, men in black tactical gear, Asian features hard as carved stone. One crouched down, studying her with cold assessment. He said something in Korean to the others. They laughed, a sound without humor. Please, Nia gasped, her accent thick with fear. Please, I'm just the cleaner. I don't know anything. I didn't see. Quiet. The crouching man's English was perfect, his tone flat. He grabbed her chin, tilting her face toward the fluorescent lights. His eyes narrowed, scanning her features like she was livestock being appraised. He pulled out a phone, snapped a photo, waited. 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. The phone buzzed. He read something on the screen, then looked back at her with an expression she couldn't read. Stand up. Nia's legs shook so badly she could barely obey. The man gripped her arm, not violent but absolutely unyielding. You're coming with us, he said, already pulling her toward the door. The boss has been waiting for someone like you. What? No, you don't understand. Naya twisted against his grip, her voice rising to a panicked pitch. I'm nobody. There's been a mistake. But they were already moving, dragging her past bodies she forced herself not to look at, through corridors that smelled of smoke and death, toward a black van idling in the underground garage. The last thing Nia saw before the door slammed shut was the Seoul skyline through the garage exit, a city of lights she'd never wanted to visit, in a country whose language she didn't speak, being taken to a boss she'd never heard of, for a wish she couldn't possibly understand. The room was a cage wrapped in luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Seoul's glittering skyline like a postcard from someone else's life. The bed was larger than her entire room back in Lagos, covered in silk sheets that probably cost more than her mother's funeral. Crystal lamps, marble floors, a bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. Naya sat on the edge of that expensive bed, still wearing her cleaning uniform, and felt absolutely nothing. No, that was a lie. She felt everything. Too much. The fear was so thick in her throat she could taste copper. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every sound made her flinch. The hum of the air conditioning, the distant traffic below, her own breathing. How did I get here? 26 years of being invisible, of keeping her head down and her heart locked tight, of surviving on the margins of life, and somehow she'd been seen, chosen. For what, she still didn't know. She thought about Lagos, about the cramped apartment she shared with 2 other girls, the kind of place where cockroaches outnumbered prayers. About her mother's vegetable stand, how Mama's hands were always rough from handling yams and cassava, how she'd smile despite everything and say, Nia, my daughter, better days are coming. Better days never came. Just debt. Then sickness. Then a grave Nia couldn't afford to mark properly. The loneliness that followed was different from being alone. It was a specific kind of emptiness, the kind that made men think she was available, made them try to fill spaces she deliberately kept hollow. They never understood. Her virginity wasn't about religion or some outdated notion of purity. It was about control. The one thing she could still decide in a life that had decided everything else for her. Give yourself to the wrong person, her mother once said, and you give away pieces you can't get back. So Nia held on. Became the woman who cleaned offices and dreamed small dreams and trusted no one enough to let them close. Fear was expensive, but safer than hope. The door opened without warning. Nia shot to her feet, her pulse spiking. A man entered, tall, lean, with sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't so cold. Korean, probably in his early 30s, dressed in all black like the soldiers from the raid. His eyes were dark and empty, the kind that had seen too much and felt too little. He looked at her the way someone might look at furniture. "Sit down," he said in English. His voice was quiet but absolute. Naya remained standing, her chin lifted despite the terror singing through her veins. Small rebellion. Pointless, probably. But hers. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, more like recognition of futility. "Sit. Stand. It doesn't matter." He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Don't try to escape. There's nowhere to go. This building is monitored. The streets outside don't speak your language. You have no money, no passport, no friends." "Then let me go," Nia said, hating how her voice shook. "That's not my decision." "Whose decision is it?" For the first time, his expression shifted. Something flickered across his face. Was it pity? Regret? It vanished before she could name it. "The boss will explain. Tomorrow." He started to leave, then paused at the door. Through the crack, Naya glimpsed another room across the hallway. Medical equipment. The silhouette of someone in a bed, frail and unmoving, surrounded by machines that beeped rhythmically. An oxygen tank. IV stands. The man, her guard, her captor, whatever he was, noticed her looking. His jaw tightened. "His name is Kang Dae-won," he said quietly. "He's dying, and he has one last wish." His eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat she saw something human beneath the ice. "I'm sorry you're here." Then he closed the door, and Nia heard the lock click into place. She stood alone in her gilded cage, watching Seoul's lights blur through tears, and understood with terrible clarity. Something was about to be asked of her. Something that would cost more than money. Something that would cost pieces she'd spent her whole life protecting. The morning came too bright, too normal for what was about to shatter. Nia had spent the night curled on that expensive bed, still in her cleaning uniform, replaying escape scenarios that all ended the same way. Impossible. When Junseok entered without knocking, she was staring at the ceiling, counting her heartbeats like currency she was about to spend. "He's ready to see you now." She followed him through corridors that smelled like money and medicine, past guards who watched her with expressions she couldn't read. Daewon's room was larger in daylight, the medical equipment more obvious, the man in the bed more obviously dying, but his eyes were sharp when they landed on her. "Sit, Miss Okafor," he said, his English heavily accented but clear. "We have business to discuss." Business. Like she was here for a job interview instead of a kidnapping. Junseok stood by the door, arms crossed, face carved from stone. Daewon gestured weakly toward him. "Han Junseok will explain the terms. I grow tired easily these days." Junseok stepped forward, and for the first time, Nia saw the muscle working in his jaw. Discomfort, maybe, or disgust. "Mr. Kang is dying. Stage 4 cancer. He has 6 months, maybe less." "I'm sorry," Nia said automatically, then hated herself for it. "Don't be." Daewon's smile was thin. "I've earned this death. But before I go, I have one wish. A legacy. A child born outside this world of violence, untouched by what I've built." Nia's stomach dropped. "What does that have to do with—" "You will carry it?" Junseok cut in, his voice flat, mechanical. "You will be provided for during the pregnancy. Medical care, security, anything you need. After the birth, you'll receive $2 million and safe passage back to Nigeria. The child will be raised far from here, in a family we've vetted. You'll never see them again." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. "You want me to? To be a surrogate?" "Yes," Daewon said simply. "No." Nia shot to her feet, her voice rising to a scream. "No, I'm not an animal. I'm not for sale. You can't just buy a person and—" "We already have," Junseok said quietly. The truth of it hit like a fist. They could. They did. She was here, wasn't she? Taken from her life, brought to a country where she knew no one, held in a gilded cage with no keys. "My mother raised me to have dignity," Nia said, her voice shaking with fury and tears. "To never let anyone make me less than human. And you want me to give you a child? My child? Like I'm livestock?" Daewon shifted in his bed, wincing. "I'm offering you more money than you'd see in 3 lifetimes of cleaning offices. Your family's debts cleared? Protection from my family? Nia's blood went cold. What do you know about my family? Junsuk pulled out a tablet, turned it toward her. Photos. Her cousin Ada in Lagos, walking to the market, her aunt's small shop, addresses, names, daily routines documented with terrifying precision. We know everything. Junsuk said, and there was something in his eyes, apology maybe, or warning. Cooperate and they remain safe, untouched, refuse. He didn't need to finish. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Nia's legs gave out. She sat hard, her whole body shaking. You would hurt them? Innocent people? This world doesn't distinguish between innocent and guilty, Daewon said. Only between those who comply and those who resist. I suggest you choose wisely. There's one more thing. Junsuk's voice had gone even flatter, if possible. His knuckles were white where he gripped the tablet. Mr. Kang's condition, he's too weak to father a child himself. Understanding crashed over Nia like ice water. No, no, you can't mean. I will be the biological father, Junsuk said, and for the first time his mask cracked. She saw it, the briefest flash of self-loathing, of revulsion at his own words. The child will still be raised according to Mr. Kang's wishes, but genetically it will be mine. Nia looked between them. The dying man who'd orchestrated this nightmare, the soldier who would execute it, and herself, trapped between impossible choices. If I do this, she whispered, if I agree, you promise my family stays safe, the baby goes to a good home, I get the money and freedom? You have my word, Daewon said. Your word. Nia laughed, brittle and broken. The word of a mafia boss who kidnaps women. The only word you have. She thought of Ada, of her aunt who'd taken her in after Mama died, of the promise she'd made at her mother's grave to never lose herself. But what was a self-worth if it cost her family their lives? Nia closed her eyes, felt tears slide hot down her cheeks, felt something inside her, something precious and carefully guarded, begin to crack. I'll do it, she said, her voice barely audible. She opened her eyes, looked straight at Junsuk, and let him see her hatred. But I hate you for this. Both of you. I'll never forgive what you're taking from me. Junsuk's jaw clenched. He nodded once, then turned away, and Nia could have sworn she saw his shoulders tighten like he was bracing for a blow. It's settled then, Daewon said, sounding satisfied. Han Junsuk will handle the arrangements. Miss Okafor, welcome to your new life, temporary as it may be. But Nia barely heard him. She was too busy feeling her old life dying, wondering what kind of person she'd become when this was over, wondering if there would be anything left of her to salvage. The answer, she suspected, was no. The night it happened, Nia had cried until she had no tears left. They'd given her 3 days to prepare, clinical language for the most violent invasion of her body and spirit she'd ever experienced. Junsuk had knocked on her door at exactly 10 p.m., his face expressionless, and waited while she followed him to a bedroom that felt more like an execution chamber. No words. What words could possibly fit? When he touched her, his hands were careful, almost gentle. Like that made it better. Like consent coerced at gunpoint was somehow less devastating if delivered with consideration. It didn't. Nia screamed, not from physical pain, though that was real and sharp and burning, but from the psychological agony of feeling herself fracture. The sound ripped from her throat, raw and animal, and she saw Junsuk's jaw clench so hard she thought his teeth might crack. His eyes were closed, his face turned away, like he couldn't bear to witness what he was doing. They were both being violated, just in different ways. When it was over, he left money on the nightstand, 5,000 US dollars in neat bills, payment for services rendered. He couldn't meet her eyes as he dressed, couldn't speak, just buttoned his shirt with shaking fingers and walked out. Nia lay there for hours, feeling dirty in ways no shower could reach, wondering if this was what death felt like. Not the end of breathing, but the end of believing you mattered. The pregnancy test came back positive 2 weeks later. Nia stopped eating, stopped speaking unless directly addressed. She sat in her gilded cage and sketched on paper someone had left her, violent, angry drawings of birds with broken wings, cages with melted bars, women with no faces. Junsuk was assigned as her guardian. To ensure your safety, Daewon had said. More like to ensure her compliance. The first week, they existed in hostile silence. Junsuk would bring meals, set them down, leave. Nia would ignore them until they went cold. He'd bring new ones. The cycle repeated. Then one morning she found jollof rice and fried plantains beside her bed. Nia stared at the food. Her food, Lagos food, the kind her mother used to make. She looked up at June Suk standing in the doorway. How did you? I researched Nigerian cuisine, he said stiffly. You need to eat, for the baby. It shouldn't have mattered. Shouldn't have softened anything. But Nia found herself eating, found the taste of home, bringing tears she thought she'd exhausted. Small changes followed. He brought her sketchbooks, real ones, expensive. She drew compulsively, filling pages with images she couldn't explain. He watched sometimes, silent, and she wondered what he saw. One evening, 3 weeks into the pregnancy, she broke the silence. Why do you do it? Follow his orders even when they destroy people. June Suk was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I was 8 when Daewon found me. My parents were dead, killed over a debt to his organization. He could have left me to starve. Instead, he raised me, trained me, gave me purpose when I had nothing. So you owe him, Nia said bitterly. Enough to do this. Loyalty is all I have. His voice was hollow. Without it, I'm just a killer. At least with it, I'm a killer with a code. That's a terrible code. Yes. He looked at her then, and she saw exhaustion in his eyes. It is. She wanted to hate him purely, simply. But she was starting to see him as another kind of prisoner, one who'd been in his cell so long he'd forgotten what freedom looked like. You hate this as much as I do, she said. Not a question. His hands clenched. Hate doesn't change duty, but his voice suggested he wished it did. The attack came a week later, shattering their fragile détente. Naya was sleeping when the window exploded inward. She woke to glass and shouting, to Jun Suk's body suddenly shielding hers, his gun firing in the darkness. Rival gang, she learned later, trying to kidnap Daewon's investment. Jun Suk fought like a demon, took a knife wound to his side protecting her, and never once flinched. When it was over and the bodies were cleared away, he sat on her floor pressing gauze to his bleeding side, refusing medical attention. You're hurt, Naya said quietly. I'm fine. You saved me. That's my job. But Nia reached out, hesitant, uncertain, and pressed her hand over his on the wound. He looked up at her, surprised, and she saw past the soldier to something vulnerable beneath. Thank you, she whispered. His eyes softened, just slightly, just enough, and something shifted between them, tectonic, dangerous, irreversible. The beginning of something neither of them wanted, but both of them needed. Understanding. Maybe even the first seeds of something more. The summons came at midnight. Naya had been lying awake, one hand resting on the small swell of her belly where life had taken root despite everything. 3 months pregnant. 3 months of morning sickness and strange cravings, and a confusing tenderness from Jun Seok that made her chest ache in ways she didn't want to examine. He's asking for you, Jun Seok said from her doorway, his face unreadable in the dim light. Daewon's room smelled like death, dressed in antiseptic. The machines had multiplied since she'd last glimpsed them. More tubes, more monitors, more evidence that time was running out. The man in the bed looked like a ghost of whoever he'd once been. Skin stretched thin over bones, eyes sunken but still sharp. Sit, Nia, he rasped in English smoother than she'd expected. We need to talk. Alone. Jun Suk hesitated at the threshold. Something passed between the two men, a silent conversation in glances and tight jaws. Finally, Jun Suk bowed his head and left, closing the door with a soft click. Nia sat, waited. You think I'm a monster, Daewon said. Not a question. Yes. A wet laugh rattled from his chest. Good, you should. He shifted, wincing. But I need you to understand something before I die. This was never about me. Nia's hands clenched in her lap. Then what? It was about saving him. The words hung in the sterile air. Naya blinked, confused. Jun Suk? I found him when he was 8 years old. Daewon's gaze drifted to the window, to Seoul's endless lights. Orphaned, starving. He'd watched his parents murdered over a gambling debt, my organization's debt. I could have left him to die in that alley. Instead, I made him into a weapon. Naya's breath caught. She'd seen Jun Suk fight during the attack weeks ago. Efficient, brutal, a machine built for violence. But 8 years old? I trained him, fed him, gave him purpose, and trapped him. Daewon's voice cracked. In this world, loyalty is blood. You don't leave. You die in it, or you die trying to escape. Jun Suk has wanted out for years, but he had no reason strong enough to justify betrayal. No family, no future, nothing worth the target it would paint on his back. Understanding crept through Nia like ice water. The child. The child, Daewon confirmed. A family gives him legitimacy to leave. A reason the other bosses might accept. Not forgive, never forgive, but accept. He's done enough for us to earn one exit. One. You used me. Nia's voice shook with fury. You took everything from me to save him? I used you both, Daewon said simply. I'm not asking forgiveness. I'm dying. Forgiveness means nothing to me now. But I gave you each other, and that's more than I ever had. The woman I loved died because I couldn't protect her from this life. Maybe you two can do better. That's not? You can't just... Nia stood abruptly, her chair scraping harsh against the floor. Does he know? Nia stormed out, her heart a war drum in her chest. She found Junsuk in the hallway, leaning against the wall like he'd been holding it up. His eyes met hers, guilty, exhausted, resigned. Did you know? She demanded. He didn't insult her with an immediate answer. Instead, he pushed off the wall, ran a hand through his dark hair, and exhaled slowly. Not at first, he finally said. When he first told me the plan, I thought it was just his ego, legacy. All the things dying men want. But then, he stopped, jaw working. About a month in, I understood. He was giving me an out, using you to set me free. And you didn't stop it. I couldn't. The words sounded like they cost him. By then, the wheels were already in motion. Other bosses knew. Contracts were signed. If I'd backed out, you'd have been killed as a loose end, and I'd have been punished for defiance. I had to. He trailed off, looking away. I had to see it through. You could have told me. Would it have changed anything? His eyes found hers again, and she saw something raw there. Something that looked like pain. You were already trapped. We both were. Nia felt tears building. Anger, grief, something else she couldn't name. I hate that you're right. Junsuk stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. When she didn't retreat, he raised his hand and gently, so gently it broke something inside her, wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. I'm sorry, he whispered, for all of it, for what was done to you, for what I did, for not being strong enough to stop any of it. His touch lingered, warm against her skin, and Nia realized with startling clarity that he wasn't her captor anymore. He was another prisoner, just in a different cell, with different chains. They were both victims of the same cruel wish. What do we do now? She asked. His hand fell away, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. We survive, together, and when he dies, we run. Daewon died on a Tuesday morning, and the Empire began eating itself by noon. Nia was 5 months pregnant when the news reached her, far enough along that her belly had become undeniable, that she felt the baby move at odd hours like a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. Junsuk had been in meetings all morning, the kind where men in expensive suits discussed territories and blood prices. She learned later that 3 of them had already decided he needed to die. The attack came at 3 a.m. Nia woke to gunfire, and Junsuk's hand clamped over her mouth. We have to move. Now. His voice was urgent, controlled panic. He pulled her from the bed, threw a coat over her nightgown, and guided her toward a hidden passage she'd never known existed. What's happening? Betrayal. He checked his gun, his face grim in the emergency lighting. Park Jin-ho sold you out to the Chungsu gang. They want leverage over me, and you're it. The safe house shook with an explosion. Somewhere below, men were shouting. More gunfire, closer now. They ran through concrete corridors that smelled like mold and fear. Junsuk moved with lethal grace, Nia stumbling behind him, one arm wrapped protectively around her belly. At a junction, he stopped, listening. Too many footsteps, coming from both directions. There's another exit through the basement, he said quickly, pressing a key card into her hand. Take the left corridor, down 2 flights. What about you? His eyes met hers, and she saw the decision already made. I'll draw them off. You run. No, Nia. He gripped her shoulders, his fingers trembling. If they catch us both, we're dead. This way, you have a chance. The baby has a chance. June Soak. He kissed her. Fast. Desperate. Tasting like goodbye. Then he shoved her toward the left corridor and ran right, firing his gun to attract attention. Nia ran, but she didn't make it far. They were waiting at the basement exit, 3 men who grabbed her before she could scream. A hood went over her head, zip ties cut into her wrists. She was thrown into a vehicle that smelled like cigarettes and engine oil. When the hood finally came off, she was in a warehouse. Rusted metal, concrete floors stained with things she didn't want to identify. A man in an expensive suit sat across from her, smoking a cigarette with practiced ease. Naya Okafor, he said in accented English. The Nigerian whore carrying Han Jun-suk's bastard. You're worth more than you know. Please, Nia whispered. The baby will be fine, as long as Jun-suk cooperates. He leaned forward, blowing smoke in her face. We sent him a photo. Your pretty face, our location. He has 24 hours to surrender himself, or we start mailing you back to him in pieces. They didn't beat her, didn't need to. The psychological torture was enough. Being bound to a chair for hours, the cold seeping into her bones, the baby moving restlessly inside her like it sensed her fear. They brought her water, but no food, kept the lights blazing so she couldn't sleep. Time became meaningless. At some point, Naya stopped being afraid and started being angry. At Daewon for starting this, at Jun-suk for making her care, at herself for being weak enough to get caught. But underneath the anger was something else. Certainty. She wanted to live. Wanted this baby to live. Wanted the future she'd started glimpsing in stolen moments with Jun-suk. The way he'd started smiling at her growing belly. How he'd learned to make Nigerian jollof rice. The careful way he touched her like she was something precious instead of a transaction. She wanted him. God help her, she wanted all of it. Across the city, Jun-suk stood in the ruins of the safe house and made his choice. For 15 years, loyalty had defined him. He'd killed for it, bled for it, buried his humanity for it. The Mafia had given him purpose when he had nothing. Daewon had saved him when he should have died. But none of that mattered anymore. He looked at the photo they'd sent, Nia bound and terrified, the curve of her pregnant belly visible beneath her thin coat, and felt something inside him crack open. Not break. Transform. I've killed for duty, he thought, loading his guns with methodical precision. Now I'll kill for love. He made 3 calls, burned every bridge he'd ever built, declared war on his own organization, and went to get his family back. Jun-suk hit the warehouse like a storm with a vendetta. He'd spent 15 years learning every dirty trick, thus every weak point, every corrupt cop and bribable guard in Seoul's underworld. Now he used it all. The external security went down first. Cameras looped, guards paid off, or quietly neutralized. He moved through shadows like he'd been born in them, because in a way he had been distracted by his phone. Nia had watched her mother work miracles with nothing but determination and wire hangers. A bobby pin from her hair, bent carefully with her teeth, became a tool. Her fingers were clumsy, swollen from pregnancy and stress, but fear made her patient. The lock clicked open. She didn't run. Not yet. She was 5 months pregnant and exhausted. She'd make it 10 feet before they caught her. Instead, she waited, listening to the guards' routine. 3 men, rotating shifts. The one watching her changed every 4 hours. When the explosion rocked the building's east side, Nia knew. Jun-suk had come. She screamed, high, panicked, the sound of a terrified woman. Her guard rushed over, gun drawn, and Nia swung the chair she'd been tied to with everything she had. The metal leg caught him across the temple. He went down hard. Nia grabbed his radio. Help! She's escaping! Southeast corner! Her Korean was broken but functional. Jun-suk had been teaching her, and terror made her convincing. Footsteps thundered away from her position toward the false alarm. She moved in the opposite direction, toward the sound of gunfire. They found each other in the chaos. Nia rounded a corner, and there he was, face streaked with blood that wasn't his, eyes wild with something between rage and desperation. When he saw her, something in his expression shattered and rebuilt itself in the same breath. I thought I lost you, he breathed. You came. It wasn't a question. She'd known he would. Somehow, impossibly, she'd known. A guard appeared behind her. Jun-suk moved before thought. 3 shots, precise, professional, the man crumpling without ceremony. He'd killed before, would kill again, but this time it was different. This time it was personal. Stay behind me, he ordered, but Nia shook her head. I can help. I remember the layout from when they brought me in. There's a service exit. More guards. Jun-suk fought like a man possessed, each movement economical and brutal. He'd been trained to be a weapon, and now he wielded that training to protect instead of destroy. When one got too close, Nia threw a metal pipe she'd grabbed, catching him off guard long enough for Jun-suk to finish it. They moved as a unit, her brain and his muscle, escaping through maintenance corridors that smelled of rust and rat droppings. Behind them, the warehouse erupted in flames, Junsok's final insurance policy, destroying evidence and buying time. Seoul's underground transit system became their sanctuary. Not the modern subway with its cameras and crowds, but the abandoned stations, the tunnels sealed off after the war, the places only ghosts and criminals knew about. Junsuk led her deep into the earth to a maintenance platform where old trains went to die. Finally, silence, just their ragged breathing and the distant drip of water. Nia collapsed against a wall, her body shaking with delayed shock. Junsuk knelt before her, his hands hovering over her belly. The baby. Moving, she assured him. Angry, I think. Like its father. His laugh was raw, almost a sob. He pressed his forehead to her shoulder, and she felt him trembling, the invincible soldier, finally breaking. I don't deserve you, he whispered into her coat. I don't deserve this chance, but I swear, Nia, I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of it. Nia's fingers found his hair, tangled and damp with sweat. She tilted his face up, seeing every scar, every shadow, every piece of him that had been broken and badly mended, and she saw something else. Hope. Then start now, she said. Help me build something new, not his legacy, not your past, ours. He kissed her then, not desperate this time, but gentle. Reverent. Like she was a miracle he couldn't quite believe in. His hands cradled her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. When they finally broke apart, he rested his hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick against his palm. New identities? He said, his voice steadier now. I have contacts in Hong Kong who owe me. Forged documents, clean passports. We leave Korea, start over somewhere they'll never look. Where? Where do you want to go? Naya thought of Lagos, of yam sellers and humid air and a language that felt like home. West Africa. Ghana, maybe. Somewhere by the ocean, somewhere we can breathe. Then that's where we'll go. He helped her stand, supporting her weight. We'll raise our daughter far from all of this. Daughter? His smile was small but real. I know. Don't ask me how. I just know. They made their plans in that abandoned station, two broken people building a blueprint for healing. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Nia felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. Genuine hope. They almost made it out clean. The documents were ready. The ship to Accra left in 6 hours. Junsuk had arranged everything with the precision of a man who'd spent his life planning escapes he never took. But Park Jin-ho had one final play. The call came to the burner phone Junsuk still carried. Old habit, dangerous necessity. The docks, Pier 17, come alone or I release your location to every gang in Seoul. Jin-ho's voice was smooth, confident. Let's end this properly. Junsuk's jaw tightened. He wants to tie up loose ends. Me, specifically. Then we don't go, Naya said immediately. They were in a cheap motel room that smelled like mildew and broken dreams, her hand resting on her belly, where their daughter kicked impatiently. If we don't, he'll hunt us forever. He has resources, connections. We'd never be safe. So what, you just walk into a trap? Yes. His eyes met hers, calm and certain, but not alone. Nia understood before he finished explaining. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something sharp and bright. Determination. I'm coming with you. Nia, I'm coming, she repeated. You taught me to shoot, remember? And I'm tired of being the victim in this story. Besides, I have an advantage you don't. What's that? She smiled, bitter and knowing. Men like him never see women like me as threats. I'm invisible until I'm not. They arrived at the docks as the sun set, painting the water rust and gold. Pier 17 was industrial, all shipping containers and crane shadows. Jinho waited with 6 mercenaries, professional killers who'd work for anyone with cash. Hanjun Suk? Jinho called out, cigarette glowing between his fingers. And you brought your whore. How sentimental. Junsuk's hand twitched toward his gun, but Nia touched his arm, calm, patient. They'd planned this. You wanted me, Junsuk said. Here I am. Let her go. Why would I do that? Jinho circled them like a shark. She's leverage. Insurance. Once you're dead, I'll sell her and the bastard to the highest bidder. Daewon's last joke on us all turned into profit. She stumbled backward, hand to her mouth, playing the frightened pregnant woman. Jinho's men barely glanced at her as she moved toward a shipping container. That was their first mistake. You were always weak, Junsuk, Jinho continued, caught up in his monologue. Daewon saw it. That's why he tried to give you an out. But men like us don't get happy endings. We're not built for them. Maybe I wasn't, Junsuk said quietly, but I'm building myself into something different. The fight erupted fast. Junsuk moved first, taking down the closest mercenary before Jinho could finish his next sentence. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off metal. Naya pressed herself behind the container, hand shaking as she pulled out the device Junsuk had prepared. A modified phone connected to the syndicate's internal network. She hit record. Kill them both, obviously. Jinho was shouting into his phone, thinking he was safely behind his guards. Then I'll take over Day One's territories. The old man's dead, his protege's dead, and I'm the only one left with the infrastructure. The other bosses will have to accept it. He kept talking, arrogant and stupid, confessing to murders, embezzlement, betrayals that went back years. Nia captured every word. Meanwhile, Junsuk fought like he was dancing with death and winning. A knife flashed. Someone screamed. He took a bullet to the shoulder, but didn't stop. Couldn't stop, because Nia was there, and their daughter was there, and he'd die before he let anything touch them. When the last mercenary fell, it was just Junsuk and Jinho. The traitor pulled his own gun, hands shaking. You should have stayed loyal, he spat. Loyalty? Junsuk's laugh was dark. You sold out your own boss for power. You don't know what the word means. Nia stepped out from behind the container, phone in hand. But they will. She hit send. The recording, Jinho's confession, his conspiracy, his betrayal, broadcast simultaneously to every major player in Seoul's underground. Syndicate bosses, rival gangs, even corrupt cops who were on the payroll. Proof, undeniable and damning. Jinho's face went white. What did you? His phone exploded with incoming calls. So did the phones of his dead mercenaries. The empire he tried to steal was already turning on him, wolves scenting weakness in one of their own. Junsuk's gun never wavered. Your choice. Run now, maybe survive a day, or I end it here. Jinho ran. They let him. It didn't matter. He was a dead man either way. As sirens wailed in the distance and Seoul's criminal underground began tearing itself apart over Jinho's treachery, Na and Junsuk walked calmly to Pier 23, where a cargo ship waited. The captain asked no questions, just checked their forged papers and nodded. They stood at the railing as Korea's coast disappeared into darkness. Junsuk's shoulder was bandaged, his face exhausted. Naya leaned against him, feeling their daughter kick, feeling the ocean breeze that smelled like freedom. It's over, she whispered. He agreed. Then, softer, and it's beginning. The ship turned west toward Africa, toward home, toward a future they built from pain and turned into something like hope. The coastal village of Anamabo didn't ask questions. 6 months after stepping off that cargo ship, Nia stood barefoot on their porch, watching the Atlantic Ocean paint itself gold with morning light. In her arms, their daughter, Adaz, meaning princess in Igbo, nursed contentedly, tiny fingers curled against Nia's chest. Ne? Nia whispered, using her mother's language. Mother, can you say it? Ne. Adaz's dark eyes, so like Junsuk's it sometimes stole Nia's breath, blinked up at her. Too young for words yet, but Nia spoke to her anyway. Igbo, English, even the Korean phrases Junsuk taught them both. Their daughter would grow up knowing she came from everywhere and belonged to no one but herself. Down at the beach, Junsuk was already working. He ran a small shipping business now. Legitimate, legal, boring in the best possible way. He coordinated deliveries between coastal villages, used his knowledge of logistics and networks for good instead of blood. His hands, which had killed more people than Nia probably knew, now tied rope knots and carried crates of fresh fish. The scars were still visible, the one on his shoulder from Jinho's bullet, others older that mapped a violent history across his skin. But he smiled now. Actually smiled, with his whole face, like he'd remembered how. Your papa is terrible at relaxing, Nia murmured to Eddies. We'll have to teach him. Behind her, the school she'd opened was already buzzing with early activity. 20 girls, ages 6 to 16, whose families couldn't afford education elsewhere. Nia taught them reading, math, and something harder to quantify, that they were worth more than what men decided. Day One's apology money, blood money, really, transferred through untraceable channels before he died, funded it all. Nia had almost refused it, but Junsuk had taken her hand and said, he used us to create life. Let's use his money to do the same. So she did. And every girl who learned to read was a small redemption. Adais finished nursing and burped, a sound so undignified it made Nia laugh. She carried her daughter inside to their simple home, all wooden floors and open windows that let the ocean breeze through. Her journal lay open on the kitchen table, morning pages half finished. Pain births new life, she'd written. I understand that now. Not just the physical pain of labor, though God, that was real, but the deeper pain. The breaking open of who you were to become who you're meant to be. I was destroyed in Korea, taken apart piece by piece. But I wasn't just put back together. I was remade into something stronger. A mother, a teacher, a woman who survived and chose to build instead of break. Junseok's footsteps on the porch made her look up. He was sweaty from work, sandy from the beach, and grinning like a man who discovered joy was actually possible. Watch this, he said, setting Adais on her feet. Their daughter wobbled, grabbed his fingers, and took one step, then another. 3 total before her legs gave out, and she sat down hard, looking surprised. Did you see that? Junseok's voice cracked with wonder. She walked. Nia, she walked. Nia's eyes burned with happy tears as she joined them on the floor, the 3 of them in a tight circle. Adais laughed, pure, uncomplicated joy, and reached for them both. Later, after Adaizi slept and the evening cooled, Nia and Junseok sat on their porch watching the sun set where it had risen. His arm was around her waist, her head on his shoulder, their bodies fitting together like they'd been designed for it. Everything you were? Junseok was quiet for a long moment. Then, I regret how we started. The pain I caused you. But this? He gestured at their home, their sleeping daughter, the school, the life they'd built from ashes. I'd live through all of it again if it meant ending up here. Nia tilted her face up, kissed him soft and slow. When they broke apart, she whispered, "Some wishes destroy you." He completed the thought, their foreheads pressed together. Ours remade us. And in the distance, the ocean kept singing its ancient song about endings that were really beginnings, about pain that could birth something beautiful, about 2 broken people who'd somehow made each other whole. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful tales of love, redemption, and second chances. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and whether you believe in love that can heal even the deepest wounds. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The next story will shake you even more. See you soon.